So we got a part two of All Access Coaches Corner on Rising Coaches. Again, you can go to risingcoaches.com to join a membership. There's over 1,000 members. A lot of great benefits from networking to professional development to connection to career advancement. So a lot of great tools, a lot of great access, a lot of great community of other great coaches. So definitely check out risingcoaches.com. But we have Brandon Chambers here, Coach Chambers at Texas Southern. He missed a little bit of the Super 6 and 6 because he was at Coach Jazzy Hartwell's visitation, a legendary AAU basketball coach for Urban DFW Elite in Dallas. Someone I would call somebody that I was fairly close to over the years, from having some of his players to my brother having some of his players and being from Dallas. So can't say enough good things about the legacy that he leaves behind of impact of being a really good basketball coach that could put teams together and win championship tournament after championship tournament. Had a ton of high-level players and just a staple in the community. You know, I can't say enough good things about him. Doesn't seem real still, but I'll pass the mic to Coach Chambers and let him say a few words about Jazzy and his experience today.
Yeah, it was just surreal because as we were talking off air, it's crazy. Life is too short, and I think as you grow older, you start to realize how quickly it passes you by. And something I've tried to really get better at is just be more present and be appreciative of where you're at and the people and the moments in life, because you come to realize and Jazz is a great example of it. And it's just, I mean, 3-4 months ago, I was sitting on a sideline and talking to him about his daughters and life. And, you know, he was on his way to go visit his dad for his, I think it's like 82nd birthday. It just puts it in perspective how quickly things can change and how fleeting this world can be at times.
Yeah, absolutely, man. He's a father, again, a great man. He was a father to many in the community too. You know, just like I said, just such a consistent. You know, and Jazzy was a competitor. Jazzy was he always kind of had a gentle spirit about him, even though you knew he's a competitor, even though you knew he meant business. You know, he was a guy who was not afraid to show that he loved, you know, in his own way. And like I said, we definitely want to give him his respect and rest in heaven to a legend in Dallas. And so as we close that and kind of talk COVID-19 and talk just different things that we've learned, different things that I think we've all kind of gone through a transition of slowing down, being more under control, maybe just being more in tune with some things that we weren't, self-reflection for sure. Just what are some things, Coach, that you would say that you would take with you as we transition to new normal? Obviously, that was not normal, and we'll never really go back to where we were. So what would you say in the new normal that you'll take with you from kind of that quarantine time?
Well, I think I was like everyone when you get presented with something like this. And to be honest, no one really had a roadmap for how this thing was going to play out. It was kind of uncharted territory. I mean, never in the history of our country, I think, has every sport been canceled. You know, and you're in the thick of NBA and NFL teams coming back and Major League Baseball, and it's amazing because literally the world stopped. So I think I was like everyone else in that regard, where there was this time period of shock, you know, and what I tried to really do is be intentional about how I was going to attack this time period and not really look too much down the road. Kevin Eastman has a good quote, and it's the 3 most important days of the year are tomorrow, today, and yesterday. And I'm a firm believer in that, just keeping present. Obviously, today is the most important day of the year, but you always want to look forward to and have a plan to attack tomorrow, and you can never look backwards and you know, have the adulation or the joy of the success you had yesterday, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. So I kind of had that intention, just how do I get better every day? How do I just focus on today and get 1% better? So what I did was kind of made a checklist, and that included reading more books. I wanted to be really intentional about what I'm doing to acquire knowledge. You know, I'm a big quotes guy, obviously, and one of my favorite quotes is, "The man who does not read good books has no advantage over the man who cannot read good books." And Mark Twain said that, and I'm a firm believer in that now. The more I read, the more yearning and curiosity I have for knowledge, and it can be about anything. I mean, obviously in coaches' worlds, it's self-help or development or leadership, culture, those kind of things. But for me, it's, you know, and I'm no different, but for me, it's been a kind of a, I guess, a guilty pleasure now, that I actually get anxious if I don't read, because I've kind of developed that habit of every day reading for an hour, before I go to sleep, reading for an hour. It also helps you kind of center yourself and kind of have some thoughts going into the day, as well. And then also just being more present. You know, I have a fiance, and she's been fortunate. She wasn't furloughed, and she's been working extremely hard. And I think at times, like I said earlier, as coaches, we always complain about not having time. Like, it's the most valuable asset in this world, and we always complain that we don't have enough of it. But in reality, a lot of I would go on to argue that a lot of times it's in reality that we don't spend our time very wisely. And so what this has done is it kind of put everything to a halt, and now you're stuck in this situation. So in regards to loved ones or family members or just people in general, specifically for me, my fiance, I've tried to be more present. I've developed a appreciation for all of the things that she does around the house that I didn't necessarily notice because I was on the road, or I've tried to take advantage of helping out with those things. And for me, again, really, that's the two things that I've kind of taken with me. And whenever we're out of this kind of bubble of a time period that we're in, hopefully those things will carry on throughout the rest of my life.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome, man. Awesome. Love it. We change gears a little bit to same kind of topic, quarantine, COVID-19, but what's a funny story? What's a funny thing that happened? What's a funny thing you learned during that time of just kind of being locked in the house, whether it's with a family member or yourself, or the guys earlier were talking about different kids that they had experienced and changing diapers. What's something on your end that was maybe either funny or something funny you learned, or something funny story you could tell?
Oh man, you're putting me on the spot. I'd probably piggyback off those guys, man, because again, our significant others as coaches, we don't realize. Yeah, my dad used to always say it all the time, and I think it's applicable to the coaching world too. My dad used to say the hardest job in the country is actually not serving your country; it's the military wife, because you essentially, in the military, you sacrifice for your country, but as a wife of someone that's in the military, you're actually sacrificing your life for them, because they don't necessarily have the wherewithal, not necessarily wherewithal, but they can't really dictate where they go. A lot of times you get stationed where you get stationed, and that's how the United States military works. So for me, I'd probably piggyback on those guys and just say it's been, a unique learning process, especially early. I think as coaches, we're hard-headed. You kind of have to get hit over the head a few times before you get it. And for me, it's definitely been, you come to this realization of how much they actually do, and how sloppy you are as a human being, and how much you got to clean up, and how much they do for you. So I don't know if there's any specific example, but it's, definitely, it's interesting, man. I heard a stat that divorces are going up around the country as well. So I'm thankful. Yeah, I'm thankful that obviously things are still moving along.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. When's the big day, Coach, if you don't mind sharing?
It's funny. That's another funny thing. So we had joked too. We picked a date. We just haven't picked a year. So we've been engaged for 5 years now, and the coaching world. So what happened is, it's funny because when you tell people that, there's almost a negative connotation, like, and it's always on me for whatever reason, which I find.
What are you doing? Like, what's wrong?
Yeah, like she ain't sure yet, or but like I actually proposed, and then I took the job in Nevada, and it just was, timing wise, as a coach, you're always busy. And when I took the job in Nevada, she had a good job back home, and it just didn't make sense. I was going to live in the office. I was going to do everything it took to make it work. And, I risked everything. I was actually very selfish in that time period, but I knew I had to, and thankfully she stuck with me. And, for us, we're content. We're happy. It's not like either of us are going anywhere. And, I think that's kind of the key in life. It's not necessarily, I think a lot of young people rush off to get married, and look, there's nothing against that. I know a lot of people that have been married essentially their entire life, but I also know that when I was 21, 22 years old, there's no way I would have known everything I know about, my fiance now. I continue to learn new things on a day-to-day basis. And, I think some of those things can haunt you down the road if you're not prepared.
For sure. Yeah. So I'm approaching year 3. I'm approaching anniversary on the 23rd of this month. So it feels like we've been married about 10 years because we've had 2 children in that time. We've lived in 5 or 6 different cities. And luckily my wife is a coach, but even for her, it's like, she's looking around like, what's going on? But it's definitely made our bond stronger. Like you said, it's made us closer, and it's definitely made, you learn a lot about each other when you go through challenge. It's just like being on a team. It's just like coaching. And so I think that's the cool part about the partnership. When you have somebody that's willing to go through that with you and still love you, definitely don't want to let that person go by any means at any time. So, kind of changing just kind of basketball wise, man, I talked about this on the full panel, but my thing is it's not about the logo on your shirt. It's about the impact that you make. And I think that the guys that we were fortunate to have on, and yourself included, are high major impact guys. So to me, that makes you a high major coach. Now, I'm not a high major head coach making those decisions, but I think when it comes to the impact and the relevance and the value that you guys bring, that's my personal opinion. So in saying that, what is your why to coaching? Because obviously, again, you've had your success, which has been a testament to your hard work and your character. But just curious, what is your why when it comes to coaching?
I kind of mentioned it earlier as far as my legacy is concerned, and for me, my why is, I had a dad that I thought the world of him. He was, to be honest, he was my hero. He's the guy I looked up to. He's one guy I wanted to be when I grew up. And unfortunately, he got sick and passed away 10 years ago from ALS. And so for me, I was very fortunate because I was at a point in my life during my developmental years, my teenage years, where I was trying to figure out who I was. And I was very, very fortunate that I had coaches and a strong support system around me to help me navigate life and figure out how to be a man, how to operate. Guys like Shaka Smart, Mike Rhodes, Will Wade, Kyle Getter, Mike Pegues, Mike Jones. That staff at VCU really took me under their wing, and they taught me the harsh realities of life and the lessons that I need to learn. And I went into my second year at VCU being a student manager, which was my senior year, and told Coach Smart I wanted to coach, and he gave me advice. And to be honest, those guys are people I can always call and get advice from. And their impact on me has just fueled my desire to be better and be like them, to be honest. We talked about standing on the shoulder of giants. Well, they're my giants, because every day I got to learn from them, whether they were teaching a lesson or not. I looked at them and thought, that's what I want to be like. And each person, I tell everyone I won the lottery. I blindly kind of joined as a student manager. We go to a Final Four, have a guy like Shaka Smart to learn from and just see how he operates as a man. And then the people I've worked for, some of the names might not be as familiar, but they're elite people. And I've taken something from every single one of them, from Trevor Woodruff, who, he was a head coach at Misericordia, to now he's at Bucknell. In the middle of that, he was at Scranton. He went 114-10, I think, in 5 years as a coach. One of the best coaches I've ever been around. No one probably even knows his name, especially on the men's side, because he's on the women's side now. Glenn Farello, head coach at Paul VI, one of the best human beings I've ever met. I could call him right now and we'd have a 3-hour-long conversation about life. And he'd want to know everything about me. And if I tried to direct a question, hey, how's your wife doing? He'd immediately bounce it back to me. And just that's just how much he cares about other people. To the guys with Team Takeover, Keith Stevens and Doug Martin, those guys taking me under the wing, and just the DMV, just, kind of fostering me as a young coach, and showing me the ropes, and showing me the value of, hard work, and really doing everything for the players. Then going to Marymount University and Chris Rogers, and learning all about detail and execution. Then going to Nevada with Eric Musselman, and obviously learning, from a guy who's been a NBA head coach for 2 different organizations and had tremendous amount of success everywhere he's been. Every level of, X's and O's, relationships, recruiting, marketing, administration, community involvement, fan involvement. I hit the lottery. I can't thank those guys enough for everything they've done for me. And so my why is really just to, like we talked about earlier, make my dad proud. I'm chasing his legacy every day, and then obviously repay those guys that helped pave the way for me.
Yeah, no, that's big time. It's a heavy hitter list of people that you've been blessed to be connected with, and people that have not only poured into you, but that you've been able to serve, that you are connected to in your tree. It only speaks volumes for you to have that many in a row and that many over a span of time. So those opportunities don't come easy, as we know. So we talked about this earlier too. Just kind of tell us a little bit more about you as a player, or you kind of talked about you as how you got into it from a graduate assistant position. Is that correct? Or is it student manager?
I was a student manager to start.
Manager, who then got to did you go graduate assistant after that?
Yeah. So the Division III school I was at, it was actually a graduate assistant job, but on the Division III world, you're an assistant coach. You're taking graduate school courses, but you're not really known as a graduate assistant.
So at one point in time, did you play in high school? What made you go to VCU? And we kind of know how you got into coaching, but just if you can shed a little more light to kind of just the basketball dream and how you end up being a coach, and kind of your vision for what you'd like to accomplish with this whole craziness that we do.
Yeah. So, I got started, again, I hit the lottery. I played in high school, passionate about the game. My dad he played at James Madison. He actually played football. Our family is football fanatics. We would at dinner talk about what the Washington Redskins were doing, or talk sports, just that kind of family. I always just gravitated toward hoops. It was kind of my sanctuary. I'm the kind of guy that, and I know some players like this, some players aren't, but I like to go to the gym and just shoot on a gun for hours and just kind of lose your mind and really focus and be almost obsessive compulsive about the details in my shot. And it was just a place I can get my mind off the world. When you step between the lines, it doesn't matter your race, religion, color, how tall you are, how short you are. If you can play, you can play. And so it's always kind of been that safety net for me. I ended up going to VCU. I tell people, we're from Northern Virginia, right outside Washington, D.C. I tell people it was far enough away from home, but close enough I can get home. In reality, what that means is it was far enough away from my mom, and close enough that I could get home. Because my family's Italian, so if you know an Italian family, mothers can be very protective. So it was and it was a good situation. I became friends with some of the guys on the team. Eric Maynard, Larry Sanders, Joey Rodriguez, Bradford Burgess, Ed Nixon, Brandon Rozelle, like all those guys. VCU is a basketball school. There's no football team. So you see those guys around all the time. And just kind of through a simulation became friends with them. And it was kind of crazy because I was just hanging out with some friends, and Eric was there. And, and at that time he was getting ready. That was my sophomore year. He was getting ready to get drafted in the NBA. I think it was 20th overall to the Utah Jazz. And he just kind of comes up to me, he goes, "Hey, you should be a student manager. Have you ever thought about that?" And I don't know if you know Eric, but he's one of the most genuine guys. He's actually in coaching now. He's one of the assistant coaches with the Oklahoma City Blue. And it's crazy because I just was like, kind of like, yeah, whatever. And 2 weeks later, I ended up shooting an email. This is how naive I was. I shot an email to Anthony Grant, just like, "Hey, know Eric Manor and I'd like to be a student manager. And crazy enough, it was at like 3 o'clock in the morning I was studying for a macroeconomics test, and I was just kind of exhausted. Remembered that conversation, was kind of hating life, sent the email. Well, Coach Grant responded at like 7 in the morning. And yeah, the rest is history, man. You know, he ended up leaving for Alabama, and I think a month or so, Coach Smart got hired. And the longer I was around those guys, the more I wanted to do it. And I saw the impact that they had on that team, obviously going to a Final Four. And it just kind of fueled my desire to coach. And the longer that I've done this, the more passionate I've been about becoming a better coach and having more impact. I've just kind of set my goals higher, you know. I've been really fortunate to know some of the guys that I know and get to where I'm at. But hopefully at some point, you know, I'll be a head coach. I'm not really putting a time period on it or saying, hey, here's my 3-year goal or 5-year goal or whatever it might be. I'm just focused on living out each day and doing my job and doing the next best thing for my job. And again, chasing that why and just having impact on people. And hopefully at some point that will pay dividends to, you know, hopefully being a head coach someday.
Yeah, awesome. I believe it will, my man. I definitely believe it will. So your path is more unconventional than a lot of people as far as being a manager. Obviously, there's guys like Buzz Williams, who your brother works for, who have gone that route and maxed out or over maxed out in the sense of what he's done. What would you say, coming from that role, how have you been able to figure out how to add value to where you've been able to ascend all the way from, I mean, let's just be direct. I mean, being a lower level position at a high level place is one thing. That's a hard opportunity to get into. But being on a top 10 program with Eric Musselman in Nevada, being in full-time position and having an impact says a lot about how you were able to grow your value. So I'm just curious for all those listening, all those that may listen, how were you able to do that? What was kind of your strategy? How did you figure out? How did you kind of navigate to be able to do that? And now to even be with Coach Jones, who was a assistant at Nevada with Coach Muss, to do a great enough job there where he wanted to hire you on as an assistant. And let's be honest, there's not a lot of HBCUs that have non-Black assistants. So that says a lot about you too. So just talk about adding value and how you've been able to kind of continue to ascend in your positions.
Yeah. So for me, you know, I'm the luckiest guy in the world. So I'd be lying to you if I had this grand plan that I knew at 3 years old I wanted to be this coach, and I, you know, had this, you know, mastermind of a plan as a kid that I was going to go to VCU. And, you know, that would, you know, be foolish for me to say. Honestly, this applies to anything in life, and losing my father and obviously him getting sick has kind of fueled my drive to just get better every day and reach my potential. Whatever I was going into, I really think I would kind of had to grind, and I hate that word, but I would have really had to grind. As I said earlier, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I promise you I'll outwork you. You know, I saw my dad get up every day at 5 o'clock in the morning to serve his country. So I'm a firm believer that, you know, I can go get up every day, and whatever job or duty I have, I can absolutely do it, and I can do it a lot better than a lot of people or a lot longer. You know, and some people may say that sounds arrogant. Well, you know, my strength wasn't that I was a great player. My strength wasn't that I was this high IQ guy. My strength wasn't that, you know, whatever it might be. My strength is I just work hard. And so as a student manager, you know, and to be honest, at that point in my life, I was probably a little naive, a little immature, and probably didn't know what I didn't know. And I had to face some harsh realities. I mean, shoot, you know, we go to a Final Four, and I just kind of was so naive and dumb. I just thought you go to a Final Four every year. And I found out very quickly, as I alluded to earlier, I moved to Dallas, and I wouldn't tell recruits that I was Dallas, Pennsylvania, not Dallas, Texas, until the third or fourth call. And lived in a very, very small town, worked at a Division III school. And, you know, I was the kind of guy that if you gave me advice, I took advantage of it, but I tried to it was almost probably a vice at that point. I did it too much. They said work camps. Well, I worked every camp: Kentucky, UConn, George Mason, VCU, Radford, George Washington, all the Philly schools, Hoop Mountain, Hoop Group, Zero Gravity, Five Star. You name it, I worked at camp. UVA. I mean, it's all the East Coast schools. Just the summer grind of camp staff. And they said, well, you got to be around players. So I said, well, shoot, if I'm going to be around players, I'm going to be around the best players I can be around. So my first year working for a team called East Coast Fusion, which was run by a guy named Cade Lemke. They eventually merged with Team Loaded. Cade's now the head coach at Blue Ridge. But we had 7 Division I players on the team, and then jumping on with Team Takeover, and I just kept grinding and kept finding competitive advantages, and how do I continue to build relationships, genuine relationships. I'm a big believer in relationships start with real. And that was really what I put my hat on. And, I wasn't going to be smarter than anyone. I didn't know a whole lot. I didn't have this illustrious plan that I was going to be a mastermind and get to where I'm at because of, schematics or strategy. It was really just, I'm going to outwork people. And at the end of the day, with a blue collar attitude, I'll, let the chips fall where they may and play the hand that I'm dealt. And look, at the end of this thing, because I know how fickle and fleeting this business is, comparison is the thief of joy. And there's so many people out there, you and I both know, that are so much better than other people that get jobs. And that's the reality of life. Yep. And there's so many guys that, conversely, are not really that good, but get a job because of perception or because who they know. And again, that's just the reality of life. That's not indicative of just college basketball. That's every profession you get into. And so for me, because I'm aware of that, because I know how fickle and fleeting, I don't let the adulation, I don't let the things that it comes, the ego, the pride, I try not to let it affect me. You mentioned being in an HBCU school. To me, I love that. It's not about the school. It's not about the level. It's not about the pay. It's how do I align myself with great people? I heard Fran Fraschilla say this the other day. How do I align myself with a board of directors, people that care about my success more than they care about theirs? And just put myself in the best situation for myself, but also have the best impact, the most impact for these players. And that's really what matters. And I think somewhere along the line in a coaching industry, we've lost a little bit of that, why we do what we do. I think we get into it for the wrong reasons. We check the box on wins, and we don't really look at how many wins, your players are getting after they play for you. I can't remember what coach said it. I think it was Newt Rockne. Maybe it was John Wooden. It was one of the best recruiting classes or teams they had. And they said, hey, coach, what do you think about this team, being one of the best you've ever had? I think it was John Wooden with his recruiting class. And John, and it was kind of remarkable what he said. He said, ask me in 20 years. And what he was saying was, ask me when I know what kind of fathers they've become. Ask me when I know how they are in the community. How are they impacting others? How are they giving back to society? And I can't stress that enough. I think we become transactional in coaching in a lot of ways, and used car salesmen, and not transformational like we should be. So for me, again, it's, I would love to tell you that I had this grand old plan and, I'm the smartest guy in the world. I'm really not. I just outworked people and just tried to be aligned with people that appreciated what I could give. And I'm not really too concerned about level or job title. I just want to continue impacting people.
Yeah, I think that's we've talked before, and it shows in your sincerity. But I think that, man, there's so much that you said that's so true and so valuable for anybody that could possibly either learn and run across you or run across this recording. The transactional part of life, not just college coaching, is the easiest thing to get caught up in. We're in a microwave society. We're in an iPhone, iPad, iTunes, I society. And so it's really easy to just get caught up and think that well, for me to get here, I need to do this, and I only have this relationship that isn't based on real, like you said, because I want to get to someplace. And I think that's the hard part of even human nature, human survival, is that we want to get where we want to get. We're driven by our own goals. But I think for myself, I can say as I mature, learning how much you get from serving others. And I think I've always been transformative by nature, but I think that part of coaching is so important. And if you do it the right way, if you can figure out how to combine the drive, the intensity, the details, the strategy, and all those things that are so important, but you can't trade that for the relationship and the connection. And I think one thing I respect about you so much is just your ability to connect not only with players but with people, because I think we're in a people business, and we miss that so much that you can make an impact. The impact that we make, the positive change that we can influence, to me, is the most important part about what we do as teachers, as leaders, as CEOs per se, public figures. It should be about spreading positive, and it's hard to lose sight of that. I hope that COVID has helped all of us kind of refocus on that. But I love everything that you said, man. I love that's a big reason why that Super Six, and I talked about all you guys being high major impacts, high major coaches because of your impact. So appreciate you sharing that part, man. We'll shift to Texas Southern Pacific, Coach Jones. I've been blessed to know for a long time in my career. I met Coach Jones. He was the head coach at North Texas. I was an assistant at Collin County Community College right down the road, and just always been a top shelf type of person, man, just top shelf to the end. And Coach Price, who I worked for at Lamar, Coach Jones, I'll never forget this. I was in between jobs, and he took me to lunch at the Final Four. Like, we were at the Final Four. I happened to walk in with him. He's like, hey, what are you having for lunch? And it was like, okay. We had helped him with a kid when I was at Paris Junior College. He signed a kid named Shannon Shorter, who went on to win a championship with him on that championship team. One of my favorite players from Houston I've ever coached. Great, great young man, still impacting to this day, still playing. And he recruited another kid, Adam Brown, when I was at Collins. He ended up getting him. He went to Houston. But all that being said, Coach was always great to me. Took me to lunch. I don't know for sure that he had an impact on me getting hired at Lamar with what he said to Coach Price, but I would like to believe, based on the way Coach Price treated me and the way he talked about him referring to me. So he's always been great to me, man, just a stand-up guy, even coaching against him when I was at Fresno and you guys were at Nevada. So I say all that to say, what's three great things about Coach that makes him great? We know he's been at LSU. He's coached Ben Simmons. He took North Texas to the tournament. He's done a great job at Texas Southern and will continue to. Always a first-class guy. But what do you think makes him special at what he does? What's three things, if you had to say?
Yeah, and it's going to sound very cliche. People say it all the time and use it as kind of a phrase or a hashtag, but he's a great coach, and he's coached at the highest level. He's coached number one overall pick. There's not many coaches that can say that. He's won championships, hung banners, got rings, but he's an even better person. And I know it sounds cliche, but he really is. When I was at Nevada, he was my guy. And there were days that, in every season there's always dog days, and he was always the guy, the veteran coach, the savvy guy that would know maybe had a tough day. And, God only knows what he's going on, what he has going on in his life, the adversities, the challenges that he has to deal with. He was always that guy that would, hey, B, what are you, kind of similar to you. Hey, what are you doing for lunch? Let's go grab some food. And asking you questions, just kind of helping you refocus and recenter. So the first thing I would say is just who he is as a person. And again, I know it sounds fleeting, but he really is an elite level person. And then I can kind of break that down into the different segments for points 2 and 3. Relationships are so important to him. He's an elite recruiter. He's kind of made his name, I think, in this business as an elite recruiter, being at LSU and, and then obviously being at North Texas, getting some of the guys that maybe shouldn't have been at that level or whatever it might be. And then going to obviously LSU, getting a guy like Ben Simmons. but that doesn't happen without how he operates as a man and who he is as a person and the relationships he builds. He is as genuine as there is, as genuine as there is. And I'll give you an example. You know, the first couple of years when I was at Nevada, my fiance she wasn't living there. And I would tell him, you know, oh yeah, my fiance's coming into town this weekend. And he would pull me in his office and he'd give me a couple $100 bills and say, hey, take her out somewhere nice. It's something, you know, crazy. Like to me, it's wild. And I was a volunteer at the time too. You know, I wasn't making much money, but just genuine, really genuine dude. Unbelievable with how he kind of makes the extra effort to show you he cares about you. And then the second thing is, or the last point, the third thing is kind of about who he is as a person, is how he operates. Not just because then you I think we're all kind of aware of this in life. You know, people who are really good people around people that can help them or that benefit them, but then you see kind of their true colors when the cameras aren't on, or it's the janitor, or it's the secretary down the hall, or whoever it might be. You go into a 7-Eleven, it's the person at the counter. Well, Coach Jones treats that person like they're royalty, their king or queen or whatever it might be. Every time he treats everyone with a certain level of respect. And so again, it goes down to, you know, how he operates as a human being and his relationships. But he's the kind of guy that he treats everyone with this utmost and the highest regards level of respect. And watching that day in, day out, it makes you want to be a better person.
For sure. No, that's well said. Yeah, he's definitely elite, man. I would say he's as elite of a person as you can be, for sure. So talking about, kind of talking still TSU, we'll go recruiting pitch, and then we'll talk about what makes TSU special. So we'll use Brandon Dunson, who's your guy. We'll say that he is he's a small forward. He's a JC transfer. Matter of fact, for his sake, he's a JC. Now he's a grad transfer, but he's got 2 years. Somehow he's got 2 years. He got injured, so he's an elite level athlete, high character dude, high level defender. Could be a defensive player of the year immediately on campus. Good student. Really kind of getting recruited to higher level schools, but he has a chance to be a player of the year and take you guys to the tournament 2 years in a row at your place. What is your 2-minute recruiting pitch to him?
I would say hold on 1 second. Yeah, sorry, my fiance. Hopefully you cut this out.
She's a real boss.
No, she actually just finished working, which is impressive.
So we'll just say he's not on the call, but we'll say he is. So let's say you're talking directly to him as if he's on the call.
Well, I'll give you a couple different angles. And first off, everything comes down to relationships. I told you about the advice that Coach Smart gave me. You know, don't worry about getting the kid, build relationships. And so I think the number one thing you can do with relationships is spend time with people, you know, calling them and really getting to know them as a person. So that's first and foremost the foundational thing that I would focus on with Brandon Dunson. You know, there's a couple angles that I try to take as a coach in recruiting, trying to be completely genuine, because I know not every kid is right for every school. Not every school is right for every kid. And I tell parents up front, hey, look, this recruiting process, obviously, you know, it's an important deal. And because of that, I can't be selfish in my thoughts in this relationship and think that if you and get mad if you think that there's another school or another staff that can help you reach your potential. So I just try to be really honest and have that level of trust there, and just, hey, look, if you decide to go to another school, I get it. And this is a really important decision. And obviously we'll evaluate how we recruited you and what was said and, you know, and the relationship we had. But, you know, at the end of the day, if you think there's another staff or another school that can help you reach your potential or help you become a better person, you have to go to that school, period. Like there's no ifs, ands, whats, or buts. I can't be selfish in myself or my abilities or whatever it might be, thinking this might be the best place for you and limit your potential. That would be me not doing right by me. And so, again, another foundational piece is just building that trust And that's something I try to tell recruits and really reiterate to kids from the start of the process and families. If we're talking strictly Brandon Dunson and he's a grad transfer, the biggest thing I would say at Texas Southern, obviously you touched on it earlier, is we're an HBCU, historically Black college and university. We're actually the second largest in the country. With that, there's a great sense of pride. I was at the University of Nevada the last 3 years. Outside of Reno, the logo, University of Nevada, really has no weight. And we had a tremendous amount of success, obviously did some special things, but I've walked around back home in DC or Northern Virginia. I've been, in Seattle, wherever it might be, and I've had people stop me and ask me about the Texas Southern logo. I've been in Houston, all over, and people grab you. Oh man, I used to be up on the yard, and I graduated from there in '84. It's amazing how much, how far the school's come, and just the sense of pride that they have for their institution. It's really unique, and you don't get that a lot of places. And then the last thing I would say is, if we were talking about a grad transfer type situation, is depending on their goals. Obviously, if they're more of an academic type deal, if they're looking to get into a business school or a law school, we have two of the best in the country. But if it's a player that has a chance to play professionally, which, look, there's nothing wrong with making money playing this game, especially something that we're so passionate about because it teaches us so many life lessons. I'm a firm believer that you have to play at a school that, number one, challenges you in the non-conference, and two, has a chance to win your conference to play in the NCAA tournament.
Yep.
And make no mistake, in the last 2 years, we played the number one hardest schedule in the non-conference. Ken Palm rated us number one. So you're going to play Power 5 schools, which is important because you need to showcase what you can do against Power 5 schools, Power 5 players. And also at those games, a lot of times you're playing against players that are obviously NBA hopefuls or professional hopefuls. Well, there's NBA scouts and professional scouts at those games as well. So you're being evaluated. Whereas if you go to another school, I don't know, school, Little Sisters of the Poor, I don't know, in conference mid-major, you may not have those opportunities. You may not have enough of them. And we both know how valuable a game is in college, and how hard it is to play consistent throughout the year. There's so many different variables in college that, we give you 13 of them. We're going to play 13 high major schools or big time schools. They're going to have big time players too, and you're going to have to perform. The other thing too is having a chance to win in your conference tournament. I mean, everyone wants to play in the big dance. It's, if you've been there, people ask you to describe it. There's nothing like it in the world. It's the Super Bowl. You're the show, and it doesn't matter if you're Duke or if you're Texas Southern, you're still playing in the same tournament. And to be honest, obviously there's a fanfare for, a certain level of fanfare for a school like Duke or Blue Blood, but the way the NCAA tournament works is everyone's got a crack at it, and I also think if you're looking at a professional route, you got to play in the NCAA tournament because that's where professional scouts go, and that's where they evaluate players. How do you play on the big stage? How do you play against other elite level players, elite level teams? They've all earned a chance to be in the tournament. Well, that means that there's a certain level of playing or coaching, talent level that has gotten that team to where they're at. And how are you going to respond? And the other thing too, I'd probably put this in there because of the level of respect that I have for a guy like Johnny Jones, is he's a mentor. He's not a 1-year guy. He's not a 2-year guy. He's not a 4-year guy. I think some coaches, as we talked earlier, are transactional. He's a lifelong coach. I mean, we just went, as we talked earlier, to a funeral, a visitation of a AAU coach that has had a tremendous amount of impact on his life and helped him with certain players. I mean, he's going down a list of players. Jordan Mickey, he had at LSU. Obviously, we have the kid Jethro Chishumpa at Texas Southern. But, I mean, let's be honest, like Coach Jones didn't need to do that. That's just who he is, and made it a point to be a good human being and be a man of respect and character and integrity. And I would say that when you choose a school like Texas Southern and you have a person like Johnny Jones, that's a lifelong relationship. That's a lifelong scholarship.
Yeah, no, it's big time stuff. Well said, man. let's switch gears a little bit. This topic we talked about before, and it's definitely the main topic, other than the coronavirus in our country right now, and that is just social justice. So don't necessarily have to go super long. You can take as much time as you want, but just kind of what have you done with your teams? What is something that what are some of the things that's been going on your side as a leader of young men and as a person just in this country period? It's just kind of like we're all kind of sorting through how to make sense of it, how to move forward, how to make change, how to lead others, how to have conversations with others. I know me and you have actually had those conversations and had some difficult conversations, but in a let me learn your perspective, you learn mine. Let's hear each other out and let's figure out how we can grow from it kind of way. So obviously I know that I experienced that firsthand and I commend you for that. Just curious, just share with, your thoughts or what you guys have done with your team or what you thought has been good and kind of what maybe could be possible things for change.
So for me, personally, and I'll go personally and then I'll go professionally. Uh, Obviously, the events that have happened and the things that are going on in our country and continue to go on in our country, it's nothing new. It's nothing. This is a topic that's always been present, just hasn't been in the platform that it's been on. And so, being at an HBCU, I think there's even more significance in shedding light to some of the things that are going on. And obviously, for me, being a white Caucasian male, it presents some challenges as well. For me as a man, I've never seen color. I've never looked at a player or looked at someone's religion or whatever it might be and seen a different person than who they are, and what their heart shows and their character and their integrity. My dad was in the military, and as we talked on the phone a couple of weeks ago, if you could serve your country and die for your country, you deserve every right and every freedom that everybody else has. And the unfortunate thing, kind of wrapping up personally for me, is so much of our history, and I've learned this specifically this year, and I feel like I'm a pretty curious learner. I try to learn as much as I can all the time, and I read, I listen to podcasts, I watch, documentaries and movies about different time periods. And so much of our history as a nation is hidden. It's not taught. It's excluded from our history books. And I'm also a firm believer that history repeats itself. And we continue to have these issues and continue to have these problems. And it's been a lot of talk, and there's been some reform and some changes, but there has to really be some systemic, because we're dealing with systemic racism, systemic changes, some mass changes. I'll give you one personal story is, I'm sitting there in the middle of the year. We have two twins on our team, Jamar and Jameer Reedus from Houston. They're freshmen and great kids. Unbelievable. Honestly, two of my favorite players I've ever coached. And I know you shouldn't have favorites, but literally could not put them higher on the totem pole than, or lower on the totem pole than some of my top 2 or 3 guys that I've ever coached. Just the character, how they bring it every day, man.
Tough kids.
Yeah, they're winners, man. And so they come to my office and I have some snacks and drinks in there. So they always come and, honestly bother me just kind of throughout the day, just, want to talk and tell me about their day. And, but it's awesome, and so they come this day and they ask me about a paper they're writing. They're, hey coach, do you mind looking over this paper? We got to present it later today and give a speech. So I look at it and I'm kind of upset for 2 reasons. I'm starting to get emotional as I'm like in the office with these kids because the grammar was so poor, and they come from a good high school, but it's public high school in Houston. As you know, the zoning and districts can be very odd at times. They redistrict every 2 years, and a lot of times it's the have and have nots. You could be in one neighborhood and it has a great school, and you go 2 blocks over and that person's zoned for a bad school. And they went to a good school, but they have a certain level of education, and I'm just like sitting there reading it. I'm like, man, it just breaks your heart. It's like, so you got to really like break it down for them. And then it wasn't even necessarily that, because let's be honest, we were all bad at writing papers and doing all that, when we were in college. It was more so the content. It was about the Tulsa race massacre and the Black Wall Street and all the things that happened. And I'm like blown away because I've never heard about it. And you got to like put it in perspective. Like think about the moment that's happening for me. I'm a white male helping these two kids prepare for a speech that needs a lot of work on a subject I've never heard about, but is absolutely factual in our country.
Mm-hmm.
And I just started crying. I got emotional. I'm like, man, like this is some real life stuff, man. And it's just crazy because, again, I wasn't raised to look at color or race or religion, whatever it might be. And to have that happen, it just, and then to come full circle, and obviously with George Floyd and all the things that are happening in the country, it breaks your heart. As a team, the first thing is just the education piece, and we're dealing with generational racism. This is not something that is secluded to an older group or a younger group. This is years and years and years. I mean, you're talking even after slavery was ended, there was Reconstruction and the 13th Amendment and how they went about then the loophole in it. Well, if you committed a crime, and then the focused level of policing towards African Americans, and that was the way to put them back to work, and then segregation, civil rights movement. You're talking generations, people's great grandparents dealing with issues that we're still dealing with today. And so the educational piece is the most important. And I think HBCUs in general, just from what I've gathered this past year and just being on other HBCU campuses, do an unbelievable job teaching and educating our players and student body about the things that have happened and how to improve and get better. But and then specifically with our guys, it's really just giving them a voice, and giving them not only a voice, but also let them talk about their frustrations, let them talk about some of the things that are going on to help them understand, but also give them some opportunities to impact, and coach, met with the guys, gave them the floor, let them speak on whatever they wanted to speak on. And then just said, hey, voting is a very important thing, not just at the presidential level, but also at the state and local level, because that's what dictates a lot of the financial monies that are, sent to different places and distributed, and but also some of the ways that you can impact your community. And so I think that's a good start. And obviously we need to have some more conversations and continue to educate and really just shed light on some of the things that our nation is facing.
No, well said, man. Well said. Appreciate you sharing that, Coach. We'll kind of get lighter mood now. You talked about some guys that you've coached. You've mentioned a few. Obviously, I coached against the other set of twins that you coached that happen to be really good, the Martin twins. And so if you had to say, I know we did NBA earlier, I'm going to put you on the spot, and you may make a couple of former players a little frustrated with you, but what's your top 5 plus a 6-man of guys that you've coached, including when you were a graduate assistant?
So, oh man, you're putting me on the spot, because I honestly, some of my favorite players have been at the Division III level, particularly because it's Division III.
They count too. It doesn't have to be just because of basketball. Who are the 6 guys that you enjoyed coaching the most?
So for me, I think it starts first and foremost, and just because I've seen them grow up from 8th and 9th grade, being around them with Team Loaded, to and then going to Oak Hill and seeing what they did, going to NC State, then to Nevada. The Martin twins, look, again, you should never have favorites, but Cody and Caleb Martin, they've earned everything they've gotten in life. And I hope someday they do a 30 for 30 on them, because they have literally played on the same team their entire life. And I'm talking from youth, like church league, biddy ball, whatever you want to call it, to now they're in the NBA with the Charlotte Hornets, both playing for the hometown team on the same team. You can't write a better story.
Incredible story.
But then also their own personal trials and tribulations. Cody Martin always kind of being in the, the shadow of his brother, and he's trying to live up to, his more celebrated brother who can score and has that mentality to score, where Cody's always been the guy to do all the dirty work and kind of be a glue guy on the team, to then being drafted 36 overall. And Caleb being a guy who was on draft boards and then going undrafted and then having to find his way and his path in life. And so those guys, for sure. Jordan Caroline is another guy at Nevada that I fell in love with. Just his personality was infectious. I mean, he was so angry and played with such ferocity on the court, almost violent on the court, just his motor and how he attacked the game. But it's so funny because he's a teddy bear, and how he is as a person. He's one of the funniest human beings you'd ever be around. His work ethic, he goes from Southern Illinois, where I think he might have made 2 threes. He was 2 for 3, I think, as a freshman, to going and making, I think, over 70 as a senior. His work ethic, how he attacked every day and his attitude he went about it. Guys like Trayshawn Thurman.
And those three for the record were on the same team, which is why they were top 10. You guys were top 10, top 5 in the country. We played against those guys at Fresno, and it was not a desirable matchup for anybody in Mountain West at that time. Those guys are mismatched nightmares and guys that just kept you with sleepless nights, man. And Jordan Caroline was a beast. But keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, and then obviously, like Trayshawn Thurman, Trey Porter, those guys I grew really close to. Trayshawn being from Omaha, honestly, one of the funniest human beings I've ever. I mean, not even close. He shouldn't even be in basketball. He should be a comedian. Different dude, but so funny. Trey Porter, he basically grew up. He's 5 minutes from where I'm from back home. I'm good friends with his high school coach. I've had a chance to watch him and, obviously, have a lot of success, play on the team that was top 25 all year with us at Nevada. And then, there's so many guys at Nevada, Kendall Stevens, Hallis Cook, all those guys. I know I'm going to list off more than 6, but to guys like I coached a McDonald's All-American and BJ King, one of the most humble human beings you'd ever been around. Played for 3 different staffs at Louisville, never complained, never bickered, just did his job, and loyal. I can't even describe him in any other word other than loyal. Rick Pitino gets hit with some violations, and VJ just said, "Hey, look, I committed to the University of Louisville. This is the school I want to go to. This is where I want to play my college career, and that's what I'm going to do." And never wavered, not once. I thought that was unbelievable to have that kind of loyalty. Aaron Thompson on that team, Anthony Harris was at UNC, Brandon Slater at Villanova, and we had so many guys like Miles at Stony Brook. I think he just transferred to Bucknell. It's just that team. They were all young. We actually had 11 Division I players on that team, but we finished 6th in our conference, and they were all sophomores. And VJ was a senior, and Aaron was a senior. But learned so much just about. I was around high level players every day, and to be honest, I'm kind of shell-shocked and star-studded because I'm with a McDonald's All-American and I'm with guys that are being recruited at this high major level, but they were just regular Joes, and really accepting me. And then the relationship that we have beyond our years at Paul VI. And then just some of the guys I coached in Division III, like I talked about, DeAndre Stockman, a kid I recruited, he was playing overseas in Italy, and now he's playing professionally. One of the best 3-point shooters I've ever coached. He was 75% through 15 games in Division III. As a freshman, his first 2 games, he went 9 for 9 from 3. Unbelievable. Unbelievable family too. His dad was in the military in the Navy for a number of years, and grew really close to them in the recruiting process. To other guys in that team, J.C. Hollick, Mike Anderson, Antonio Rouse, Tim Briscoe, that group right there was we broke the school record for wins, and then we rebroke the school record for wins. And then obviously at the Division III school I mentioned earlier, Misericordia in Dallas, Pennsylvania. I go to a school in the middle of nowhere, and had guys like Ethan Eichhorst. Ethan was actually the first All-American I ever coached, and was a Division III guy, recruited by nobody. Now he's in I think he's a doctor, and he's in the medical field and doing unbelievable things. But having guys like that, Matty Green, Joe Busaka, Jeff Slanovic, both those last two guys coach now, both head coaches of Division III schools. And then obviously going back to my VCU days and being around guys like Joey Rodriguez, Eric Maynor, Bradford Burgess. You go down a list, Brandon Rozelle, he's the mayor of Richmond, Ed Nixon, Jamie Skeen, these guys, guys I stay close to still to this day. And so I know it's more than six. I wish I could give you, I shouldn't play favorites,
Just a
but
couple more things. Okay.
to be honest, like the guys at Texas Southern too, I don't think you realize your impact until you're in it. And when coronavirus hit and they canceled our conference tournament, there's so many guys on this team that have tremendous impact on me. Eden Ewing is a guy that has dealt with so much adversity in his life. And, he was in my academic group, and, I told him from the jump, hey, there's going to be days where you love me and there's going to be days where you hate me. So, and having him that last, not being able to live out his dream of that last few games, trying to fight for a NCAA berth, and having him look at me and just kind of very emotional and just saying, hey, thank you for not giving up on me, and
yeah, what a talented kid too. Played for TJ Ford and played at Tyler Junior College, signed at Purdue, and had a heck of a junior year for Coach Jones, and then got another year and had a great year for you guys again as a senior. So can't imagine, but I know you guys were close, and he was an extremely, extremely talented player and a great kid.
Yeah, and then there's so many guys on this team: Tyreek Armstrong, Justin Hopkins, and I'm gonna, miss guys: Carl Nicholas, Mike Weathers, John Walker, to guys like Ashton, Kevin Granger, Devontae Lumpkin, all these guys. They've had such impact on me. The twins, as I mentioned earlier, I hate saying that they're favorites, but in some form or fashion, they are one of my favorites. And
sure.
We talk about legacy, and I hope, by the end of this thing, I have hundreds of favorites.
Yep, absolutely. That's awesome. Well, we'll wrap up with this two-part question, Coach. What would you say? So I think it goes without saying, for those that don't know, you don't have to speak on your ability to recruit, but recruiting is usually what an assistant coach is kind of put in that box of he's really good at that, or that's why we're hiring, because he recruits or he's connected. So outside of your impact on recruiting, and I know you've done some great recruiting at Texas Southern, and more people will get to see that as you guys continue to play next year, even what your impact was, is. But outside of recruiting, what value do you bring? Which I think you've kind of touched on some of that, but you can kind of sum that up a little bit to a staff. And then what advice do you have for your younger self as we wrap up?
So the first thing is, and I talked about it earlier, my work ethic. I don't think I'm elite in anything other than just my work ethic. And I think relationships kind of fall under there too. Is some of the best advice I've ever gotten from Shaka Smart was just build relationships and try to be genuine with it and just outwork people, and at the end of the day, if I go into every day and empty my bucket and exhaust what I have in the tank, I can live with the results. And so, outside of anything that I can provide basketball wise, it's just my work ethic and the relationships I have. If I were to give myself advice, I think we talked about it a little earlier, is be present, be where your feet are. I think awareness as I get older, and this list may change. I'm a list guy too. I create a lot of lists. Awareness and self-awareness are the key indicators of success in any avenue, whether it's specific to a person, to a company, whatever it might be. It's awareness of what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you need to improve, what you need to focus on. So I would say, just be aware of everything going on, be present and really soak it all in. I think everyone's path is different. I was like every young coach when I was 21, 22, GA, working Division III, working long hours, doing all the work that is not sexy or glorious or doesn't give you a lot of pay. You're kind of just doing it because you have to do it, and it's just the baseline of success. Someone has to do it, and you have to do it at an elite level. So for me, it's just really appreciate that, because it's going to make you who you are, and it's going to help develop and shape you and mold you into the person you are. Not that I didn't appreciate it, not that I didn't, but I think I was like every next young coach, where I'm thinking about the next step, or I'm thinking about, you're at the Final Four, and as you mentioned, you're looking at the polo and the logo, and those were some harsh lessons I had to learn. And it just really be present and just focus on the now.
Yeah, no, awesome. Well said, man. I'm so glad you came on. So glad we had a chance to finish the Super 6 at 6 and just have some extended time with you, man. I think you are, my opinion, I call them gems in this business. I think you're a true diamond, somebody who may have even come from being cold at one point in time because you weren't maybe appreciated, or maybe weren't valued, or who are you, or kind of I don't want to say nobody in disrespect to you, but kind of you didn't play Division I. You weren't supposed to be somebody who was had one of these golden tickets, so to speak, to get into business. But man, have you made an incredible mark already, and just the people that you've worked for, the names you've mentioned on this Zoom, the teams that you've been on and a part of, the experiences of going to Final Fours and NCAA tournaments and being nationally ranked. You're a part of all of that, and it goes without saying, and probably anybody who saw this or listens to this can see that why I say you're a gem. So thanks so much for taking the time, man. The best days for you are still ahead, that's for sure. You will be. It's no wonder why you were recognized as under 30, one of the best 30 coaches in the country under 30 years old. I just think that, to have as quality of a person as you are, to also have the quality of care to self-assess, to learn, to have mentors, to want to do it in a transformative way, but in a way that's relational and that's just about rolling your sleeves up and putting in the work and earning it. I think anytime you sow those kind of seeds, and you're a connector, we've talked about this. I won't get into everything you're doing over this COVID-19 time, but I think you've done a great job of connecting other people to help them improve and grow and share. You've been a great giver, and I think anytime you plant that many seeds, it's just a matter of time before they all grow. So I'm excited to see where the rest of your career goes, not only your success at Texas Southern with Coach Jones, but also just as you continue to go forward, because at some point in time, you'll be one of those guys that they're looking back and saying, he was at Texas Southern at one point in time? Oh, he was a GA? Oh, wait, he was a manager? And it's cool to put those stories, that part of the story together. And I love that you don't care where you are. You treat every place like it's the most important place. So I think you are honoring your dad's legacy in the best possible way. And keep up the great work, man. Glad to have you on. I'll let you have your closing thoughts. And, thanks again, man. Shout out to Rising Coaches.
No, I appreciate you. I appreciate the platform, obviously, everything that you've done. And I know we talked about it earlier, but again, just one of my favorite quotes is appreciation is the currency of success. And we talked about standing on the shoulder of giants. I can't thank you enough. I can't thank the people behind this and people that attended. And, I gave up my number. If anyone ever has any questions, I tell people all the time, I have no problem having conversations and giving advice, whatever I can give. I feel like I've had to step and hit every rung on the ladder. I couldn't skip any. For me, there's no doubt, but there's no elevator to success. I have to take the stairs, and I haven't been able to skip a step. And like, again, standing on the shoulder of giants. There's another great quote, Les Brown. He talks about, you're sitting in the shade of a tree that was planted a long time before you came. And I thought, for me, whenever I got a chance to give back to whoever that might be, whatever platform, whatever community, because again, you can't forecast this thing. I thought I was obligated to do so because I was in their shoes not too long ago. And so if I can ever give back, I'm all for it. If you ever do anything like this again, as I said earlier, I'll be an attendee. If I can ask questions, shoot, I'm all for it. And can't thank you enough, because this is also a time commitment from you to give back to the community.
No, absolutely, man. Appreciate it so much, man. And like we always say, look forward to continuing to be on this Zoom family that we're on together. Where you're on a Zoom, I'm on a Zoom. We're learning from each other, and again, just keep paying it forward like you've been doing, man. Look forward to like I said, staying connected, and looking forward to getting back to the season and playing ball again and getting around our teams too. That's what we do it for. This part has been great to grow, but definitely looking forward to that too, man. So anything I can ever do, man, you know I'm in the corner, and keep up the great work.
All right, brother. I'll see you, Brian.
Okay, later.